Trying to conceive and feeling overwhelmed and confused with unhelpful information and advice? This podcast is for you. Welcome to Don't Tell Me to Relax. I'm your host, Hannah Pern, a fertility acupuncturist and passionate advocate for better fertility education and support. Our aim is to empower you with information to support your fertility journey and provide a community for connection with people who get where you're at. If you'd like to join us or work with us in clinic in London or across the UK, all the information is in the show notes at the end.
AcuPip sponsors Don't Tell Me to Relax. If you're looking for a way to naturally balance your body, calm your mind, and relieve anxiety, then AcuPips has the answer. AcuPips is the UK's original ear seed company, founded by traditional acupuncturist Zoe Young. Ear seeds are small seeds or metal balls attached to an adhesive and placed on pressure points on the ear in specific combinations, creating balance within the body. We like to think of it as healing jewellery. Discover more today at acupips.com and use code RELAX for 20% off site-wide. AcuPips, modern healing, ancient practice.
Hello and welcome to today's show. I am joined by Dr. Amy Beckley, a PhD scientist whose own personal fertility struggles and recurrent losses led her to create this product called Proov. Proov is an at-home hormone testing device which can help you understand your progesterone levels in the luteal phase. And we know that good levels of progesterone support implantation and early pregnancy. And we also know that lots of people have huge issues in this area. And in our community, it is the biggest question we get asked about is problems with progesterone, testing progesterone, how to support progesterone. So, Amy, I'm so excited to have you here because I know this will be a really, really popular episode with so many people. So, before we dig into it, can you just tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to do this work?
It was my personal issues with low progesterone. I was diagnosed with unexplained infertility, and told, we don't know what's wrong with you. And since we don't know what's wrong, we don't know how to fix it. So we'll do IVF, which is kind of like a catch-all procedure. Went through 2 rounds of IVF, was successful. So I now have a 14-year-old son. And throughout the process, I'm a scientist too. And I was like, what did we miss? Like, what what was the magic that IVF did that I couldn't do myself? And I came to this realization that I could get pregnant, I just couldn't keep a pregnancy. And so I'd get into 4.5, 5, maybe 6 weeks pregnant, and I get excited. And then I would, see the pregnancy test go lighter and lighter, start spotting, no heartbeat on the ultrasounds, those kind of things. So I had this idea of what if I just needed implantation help and it wasn't, I couldn't get pregnant, but I couldn't actually sustain a pregnancy. So I really got on this kind of tangent or fascination with progesterone. And so in the process of ovulation, you release the egg. Almost everybody focuses on that fact of like, I found the fertile window. I want to make sure, I time it correctly. Okay, I ovulated, done. Now we're in this like 2 week wait where it's just a black box. I can't do anything. I don't understand anything. And like implantation is supposed to just magically happen. Um, I was like, well, there's this thing called progesterone that the ovary releases after ovulation, and that's what prepares the uterus for implantation. And at any point when progesterone is not high enough or falls down, it's either hard to get pregnant, hard to stay pregnant, and that could either be miscarriage, preterm birth, everything. And then postpartum, that lovely postpartum depression is linked to that rapid decline in progesterone. And so just got fascinated about progesterone, and part of IVF was big old shots of progesterone right in the keister. And so I talked to my doctor and I said, maybe progesterone was my problem. And because of IVF and all the stuff that I was taking to support implantation and early pregnancy, what if I just conceived naturally and then just started luteal phase progesterone? He said, yeah, sure. It's a natural hormone that you make. It's not harmful. Worst that can happen is it doesn't work. So we tried it, and 2 months went by. And that second month, I got pregnant and I stayed pregnant. And that's my 11-year-old daughter.
Wow.
So I said, you know what? I think the world needs to know about my friend progesterone. Everyone's super hyper focused on egg quality and estrogen, and nobody's really paying attention to progesterone and how important it is. And I started thinking, wow, this is a big issue. Up to 35% of women have progesterone issues just because we're trying later in life. We have, toxic environments, pollution, the food that we eat, the plastics that we're exposed to, just, how we live, stress of our job. We used to be, all we did was take care of kids. Now we have careers and other things, right? So realized it was such a common issue. It's like, I want to create a platform that helps women understand their bodies and their hormones, and they can educate themselves and, have ownership over their healthcare so that when they do walk into the doctor, they're armed with knowledge, to help have a better conversation with whoever they're talking to.
Yeah. I know your story will resonate with so many people who listen to this episode. Can we start at the beginning when just to dig into it a bit more? So at the moment, in the UK, I know you're in the States, but in the UK, often what happens is that people are told and they're sent for a day 21, which already has problems, progesterone test. And then from that, they're told your progesterone is above 30 is absolutely fine. There is no problem with your progesterone. So can you just unpick the problems about that? And does the same thing happen in the States?
Yes. Yep. So the first one is the day 21. That assumes that every woman has a 28-day cycle and they ovulate on day 14. A recent study just came out where they analyzed over 100,000 cycles. It came out in Nature, and the average time the woman ovulates is 17 or 18. And so day 21 would be the wrong time to do it. And so it really should be 7 days post ovulation. And so if you ovulate on day 17, you take 17 plus 7, and then you'd go in, would be day 24. Um, that solves one issue on the timing. And so why they want to do 7 days post ovulation is because that's when your progesterone peaks and then it can come back down. So a normal luteal phase is 14 days, 12 to 14. Ideally, 14 is the optimal amount. Because if you think about what's happening during the cycle, is you have your ovary and you release an egg. It has to go all the way through the fallopian tube and implant in the uterus. So it has to fertilize, it has to divide, and then it has to implant. That all takes time. And so the time for implantation to occur is 7 to 10 days after ovulation. And so if you have, a progesterone draw on day 7, but you don't implant till day 10 after ovulation, you don't know if day 7 levels were good or not because you're really implanting on 10. Um, my personal problem is I went in for that cycle day 21 and I did know better. I went in on, cycle day 19, which was 7 days after ovulation for me. I got that level and they said, yeah, your progesterone's fine. We can confirm that you've ovulated. But then the next day I would start spotting and I'd get full on period like 9 or so days after I ovulated. And if you look in the literature, it's called luteal phase defect. Some doctors don't believe in this term, but that's when the time that you have when you ovulate to the next period is too short and doesn't allow enough time for implantation. And so my 7 days post ovulation test or cycle day 21 test missed that problem. And so, you know, what Proov does, it doesn't measure progesterone in serum. It actually measures it in urine via the metabolite called PDG. And we measure it all 4 days. So we're looking at sustained elevated levels above a certain threshold to let us know that you have the optimal environment for implantation. It doesn't mean you can't get pregnant with low levels. I've seen it happen. It just means you have a higher chance of getting pregnant because you have an optimal environment for implantation. The other problem with blood draws is your ovaries will secrete hormone in pulses. And so a single blood draw can be taken. It could be high, it could be low, and it could just be part of that pulsatile nature of the ovary. And so to get around that, people say you get your levels 3 times and then you average them, and they need to be above, in your case, in the UK, 30. In the US, we use different units and it's above 10. So just 10 nanograms per mil in the US. Um, and so there's just a lot of problems with progesterone in blood tests. And that's why it hasn't been used as a diagnostic test. It just tells you yes or no, you released an egg, not do I have enough progesterone. And that's kind of one of the things we wanted to uncover and provide a tool for, because it's so important for implantation to have enough progesterone. There wasn't really a good tool to do that.
Yeah. And that's the thing that I think is often overlooked is this idea around those high levels, and that implantation window needs to be as optimal as possible each month to give you the best possible chance. So if sperm and egg are meeting and embryos forming, I feel that sometimes that can happen with couples that we work with. It's just that implantation stage that is really missing, or it's just not as optimal as it could be, and it's difficult to really pinpoint that by blood tests alone, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
So before we get into more information, what are the common signs of low progesterone? Because we talk about this a lot. So what would you say, you can do a blood test, it might come back as saying you've ovulated, it's above what we expect it to be. So what are the signs and symptoms that a person needs to look out for that might make them think, oh, actually, this could be an issue for me?
Yeah. Short luteal phase we talked about. So the time from when you release the egg, ovulate to your next period should be at least 11 days, preferably 14. So that's your gold standard is 14 days. So short luteal phase is one thing. Spotting before your period is another thing. It just means that your progesterone could be decreasing, and it kind of makes that lining a little less stable, and you start spotting. Um, if you have PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, you typically have a lot of estrogen. So you see a lot of estrogen dominant signs. So like thinning hair, acne on the face, maybe weight gain in the middle, oily skin, those types of things. And that's a problem where your ovary becomes resistant to the hormones and it won't release the eggs. And if you're not releasing the eggs, the ovary can't make progesterone. And so that's another good indication. Most women with PCOS have low progesterone. Um, Trying over, 6, 12 months without success with your timing everything correctly, nothing, any kind of unexplained infertility, it could be progesterone. Symptoms of PMS. So, are you bloated in your second half of your cycle? Do you have headaches? Are you moody? Are you cranky? Those are imbalances in estrogen and progesterone, which are typically too much estrogen and not enough progesterone. Where if you increase the progesterone, then you're more balanced. So, a lot of people call it like estrogen dominance, and it's not. Most of the time, it's not because you have too much estrogen. It's because you don't have enough progesterone. Miscarriages, specifically, early miscarriages, so before you hit that 10-week mark. Um, age age over age of 35. So women, we will all go through menopause. The average age to menopause, at least in the US, is 51, but women will start to have ovarian function decline, which means lower progesterone levels as early as 30, 35. So age can be a factor. And we actually have recent data showing weight is a factor. So women that are overweight, above a BMI of 30, have more of a chance of having low progesterone than women of, you know, under 30 BMI.
Okay. That's really good to go through those because I know that will ring lots of bells with people. So can you tell us exactly how does Proov work? So what are the steps to use this? Because they're strips, aren't they, that you use? So how does a person who's tracking their cycle use them?
Yeah, so they're strips, and it comes with a free app that is super helpful. It's not required, but very, very helpful. So you'll download the app. and it'll ask you like when was your last menstrual cycle, how long is it? It'll ask you what kind of kits you have. So we make, LH ovulation tests, and then we make the PDG tests, which are those progesterone metabolite tests, as well as FSH tests for ovarian reserve, and then pregnancy tests. And so you enter all your information, and then it'll tell you, the app will tell you based off of your cycle when to start testing. If you're using LH test, if you're using ours, we'll calculate when your LH value is peak and say, hey, it's your peak day, go have intercourse these days. If you're using another brand, you can manually put in peak in the app, and then it'll tell you, okay, next it's time to test for the PDG test. And so we'll test 7, 8, 9, and 10 days after that peak fertility, so that positive ovulation test. If you've taken a pregnancy test or an ovulation test, it's super easy. You collect urine, first morning urine in a cup. You dip the strip, wait for kind of the urine to come up the strip. You lay flat for 10 minutes, and you read the number of lines. Like an ovulation test, the test line is darker than the control line. You know it's positive. With our test, 2 lines is negative, low PDG, and 1 line is positive, high PDG. And that's a really confusing thing for women to kind of read all these things, especially when they're just want to conceive. There's so much stuff flying at them. So the app, you can actually scan it in and it will read the value for you and tell you if it's positive or negative, and then would calculate a score at the end. So if you do all 4 of the tests, we give you what's called a progesterone score. And 100% A plus is when you have PDG above a certain level, all 4 days, everything looks good. You have the highest chance of pregnancy that cycle because we know you ovulated, at a good healthy luteal phase. And then it kind of goes down from there. So maybe you had PDG, it dropped too early, like in my case. Maybe you didn't have any, it came up, but it didn't hit the threshold, or you didn't have any rise at all. So no rise at all is anovulation. You did not ovulate. You need, ovulation induction medications. Um, and so it's different kind of various flavors of this. But the app is super helpful for telling you when to test, how to test, recording the results, interpreting them, because women, unfortunately, do not get this education in school. We're not taught. My 11-year-old is not taught anything about her menstrual cycle, or her hormones, and doctors don't have hormone classes that they go to. And so we'd really try to educate them, knowing that we just don't understand any of this information, to try to get it in a very easy, digestible manner, so that she can take that information and advocate and digest it for her own care. So that's what we really try to do.
It sounds great. It sounds so helpful. And do you recommend that people do this over a number of cycles to really assess a pattern? Because we know that cycles do vary, depending on what's going on in life and all manner of things. So do you say do it for 1 or 2 or 3? Like, what's your recommendation of how long to track for?
I like 2 or 3 because you're right, cycles vary. My most favorite example is the cycle that I got COVID. FSH was through the roof, PDG was super low, but then the next cycle was fine, right? And so it was like a transient stressor on my body that kinda went away. So I would do 2 or 3. If you're getting 100%, really looks perfect, awesome, 3 cycles in a row, I would say, you know, don't track, you know? Um, but a lot of times we see women who don't have optimal scores, and then they work with a fertility coach or a nutritionist or their doctor. They're put on medications or diet changes or supplement routines. And we love to see them track that improvement over time, because sometimes it takes, if you're not in a healthy state, it takes a few months to regain that. And so it can get a little bit disheartening to see the negative pregnancy test, but having a platform that shows that what you're doing, the work you're putting in is actually improving your scores, is so amazing, and it's really motivating. And in that case, I would recommend, tracking a little bit longer.
Yeah, and what when you came to our team meeting and we were talking about it, I was thinking this is a really good way for us as practitioners and for patients and clients that we're working with on a one-to-one basis to see that what we're doing is having an impact, or to assess whether it is or it isn't. And lots of people can feel like they make all the changes, they do all the things, and nothing changes. It's very easy to get that fertility fatigue and feel like you're not making progress. And I feel like, if you just look at your cycle, it's sometimes if your cycle's not that off, it's difficult to see. But if you're really looking at your progesterone levels and seeing an improvement in this area and looking at the data, then I'm sure it can be really, really motivating for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Other things we do within the app is, if you're coming off flying colors and you everything looks great, hey, it could be the other side of the equation. It takes sperm as well. And so we do partner with a male testing company to offer, the sperm analysis piece. A lot of times women think it's something that they need to do or something wrong with them. And 50% of the time it's the male. And so even if you're getting, really good results for you yourself, we still offer ways that and things you can do to get pregnant. So hey, everything looks good, but FYI, your tubes might be blocked, which means your egg's not actually getting down to your uterus. And so these are things that you can talk to your doctor or your provider about. And so even if it's like good results, if you're still not getting pregnant, we try to add more value to the experience so that, it's like, well, that wasn't the problem. Now maybe it's this, so that you can kind
Yeah.
of really, get to the goal as fast as possible.
And in your opinion, what are your kind of go-to lifestyle, nutrition, general kind of advice in terms of supporting progesterone? Because there's like a million and one things out there. What do you think are like sensible, achievable things that people can do to support their progesterone levels?
Um, I mean, no sugars or processed foods is probably the most important one. Mediterranean diet, whole foods, real foods, those are going to have the biggest impact. I mean, anything you put into your body is what your body's going to use to make hormones. So if it's junk, then your hormones will probably be junk as well. um, Eating the nutrients that your body needs to make the hormones. And so, like leafy greens, B vitamins, zinc, those kind of things. I have seen seed cycling work really well for women. A lot of people are like, well, that's kind of voodoo science. I don't know if it's going to work. I've seen it work many, many times. People have had a low score. They've done seed cycling a few months, and then, oh, like magic, you get a positive pregnancy test. And then there's just certain nutrients in the seeds that help support either estrogen in the first half or progesterone in the second half. So I definitely think it's, if anything, you're getting really nutritious, content that are in the seeds, if anything else. Sleep, so, so important. Find out, make sure you're getting at least 8 hours of sleep. Women actually need 8 to 9 hours of sleep, where men can get away with, 6 or 7. But our hormones metabolize overnight while you're sleeping. So if you're not getting good sleep, enough sleep, that can definitely impact it. So sleep schedules and like what you're putting in your body food wise, I think are the two main things to focus on.
Yeah, I agree. And if people are doing all of those things and they've checked all their blood work and they're still suffering with their progesterone, what's it like over there in terms of getting progesterone to support, so cyclogest or other different forms of it? What's it like over there for having that as an option for people to use without doing IVF or without doing ovulation induction, just to support their cycle? How is it with you?
I mean, doctors are single human beings who have a certain, education base, a certain, you know, history, whatever. And they used to educate that progesterone doesn't matter. It doesn't help anything. And so, depending on who you went to go see, you could get the same, oh, the studies show progesterone doesn't help. And that was just overly publicized of a study that was done wrong. And so we've just miseducated a lot of physicians. So we've seen a lot of like pushback where it's like, I tried to talk to my doctor, but they wouldn't do it. They said it didn't work, whatever. So we've actually built in the ability to get progesterone into our system, because look, progesterone's given to all women that are, in the menopause transition. It's a natural hormone. Again, it's either going to help or it's going to do nothing. And even if it's doing nothing, there's that kind of placebo effect where the woman knows she's doing everything humanly possible that she can to support a potential pregnancy. And it eases some of that uncertainty off of her, that it's like one less thing she has to worry about. And so we offer it. It's a quick, asynchronous consult, push a couple buttons, pay for a doctor's visit, and then it gets shipped to your house through the pharmacy. That's in the US. In the UK, we've partnered with a company called Plan Your Baby that does the same thing. They're very familiar with the Proov test. They offer progesterone. The cool thing with Plan Your Baby is that, if you do a couple cycles of progesterone and it doesn't work, there's the ability to kind of move through the system and get more, advanced medications, even talk about IVF, because, progesterone's not gonna fix everybody's problem, but we always try to find resources for women, places that they can go to get those medications.
Yeah. I really do believe that, if you are struggling to conceive and you haven't conceived for a long time and you're in that camp of unexplained infertility and you think your cycle's slightly off, it's definitely something to try because, as you say, the negative impacts are so minimal. It's interesting. Lots of people I've worked with have been told by doctors, "No, we don't really like to give it out because it can mess up your cycle. It can, it can stop you ovulating." And I just think we're not stupid. Like we understand when to take it. Obviously, if you take it too soon, it can stop your cycle. But it's really not empowering to be given that information. Like it could mess it up because you do it wrong. I just think
Yeah.
I've heard that way too many times in clinic from patients that I've been working with, and I just think it's not good enough.
Yeah, I think that's a problem with the healthcare system because doctors are only given, 2 minutes to talk to the patients, and trying to explain to them, like, how to take something is just not within their capacity as a physician. I once had a doctor tell me that she doesn't do any fertility workup on her patients because it's so hard to explain to them what cycle day 3 is. That she just gave up. And that's why I really love the app in our system is we will actually, if you get prescribed the medication, the doctor will follow up via email and say, "This is when you see your hormone do this, this is when you start the medication to help her, make sure she's not, taking it as birth control her entire cycle." Because we have seen that.
Mm.
But yeah, it's not necessarily accurate science, and it's not really necessarily their fault. It's just our healthcare system is so impacted that we just don't have enough time to
Yeah.
give what women need to them.
And I always think that most people, by the time they're at this point in their journey, they really understand their cycle. They know what's going on because, they're suddenly at that point where they've gone, hang on a minute, why didn't I know any of this before? And they've so people are well clued up. They know what's happening when they're at this stage. So I just think that's not good enough. So tell us, Amy, where if people want to find out more about Prove, I know you're based in the States, but you can buy it in the UK from your website, or do you have other outlets where you can find out more and get the products?
Yep, our website, so Proov Test, Proov test.com. We're also on Amazon, and then we're in select, Boots stores.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, yeah, one more thing I wanna talk about progesterone is, everyone takes prenatal vitamins, right? We're all, like, given, "Oh, you should take your prenatal vitamin," and that's just good proactive care. Most women are not gonna be deficient in these things. We get it from our food, right? But just in case you are deficient, you take a prenatal, so you're supporting, your optimal health, making sure you have enough of these nutrients around. I think of progesterone as your prenatal for your uterus. That in the
Mm.
fact that in the event that you don't make enough or don't, produce it long enough, it's there to kind of pick up the slack and help you achieve that goal. And so it's not harmful, right? It doesn't, unless you have some crazy allergy or something, which is typically usually due to what's it's formulated in, which is peanut oil and not the progesterone itself. Um, it's a very proactive way to help increase your chances. So you're taking a prenatal, why not take the prenatal for your uterus and this progesterone?
I love that. That's an excellent metaphor, if that's the right word, not metaphor, but phrase to end on. So thank you for your time. Thank you for telling us all about it, because I know lots and lots of people will be interested. So thanks again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We hope you have found this helpful. If you'd like more on fertility education, please see our Teaching to Conceive free course linked at the end of the show. You'll also find the link to join our community. For more personalised fertility support, you can work with us one-to-one in clinic and online. You can book a discovery call to find out more.